Sure. So, thank you. I'll do an acknowledgement of country. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands and waterways in which we've all joined from today. I'm on Wadawurrung country and pay my respects to elders past and present, and also extend respects to all First Nations people joining us today. And we have a tradition here to introduce yourself via the chat and also acknowledge which country you're coming from too, if you would like to do that too, please. Thanks, Monica.
Thanks, Steve. So my name's Monica, if we haven't met before. I'm the knowledge broker for DisasterWISE and come from lived experience of floods from Cyclone Debbie in 2017. Come with a bit of learnt experience as well. But yeah, really excited to have this conversation today. A lot of ways in which community connections and community-led initiative groups have very much forged a lot of the work and ethos in my life. So this is a very, very exciting conversation for us to have. So I just wanted to very quickly give you a little bit of an introduction of DisasterWISE if you haven't been here before. So DisasterWISE Community Network is a community-led learning network initially seeded by Fire to Flourish with funding by Monash University and the Paul Ramsay Foundation. The network was co-designed by people with lived and learned experience, and it exists to amplify community voices in the disaster space, cultivate connections and build trust, broker diverse ways of knowing, and to advocate for community-led approaches. Our vision is to grow a movement of people who are building resilience through self-determination and community-led action. So this year, just a little update if you haven't heard, we are becoming independent organisation with a new board that is now in place, who we are all connecting with this evening for the first time. So there is definitely wheels turning in that progress, and yeah, we will make sure to keep everyone up to date as we move forward with that. So to the topic today. So we will be talking about critical care as the practice, and that's in the sense of holding each other when those systems step back. And this builds upon the discussion and summary from last month if you ended up attending or watching or reading the summary. And that was a great discussion. You may have received the summary already, but it's on our website as well. And today we have two guests with us. We have Kelly and Millie Rooney from Australia ReMADE. And Amanda will be talking a little bit about, with Millie, about some of the document toolkits on care. And then after that conversation, we'll go to some breakout rooms. We'll have a bit of a report back and then close the session, and we will stay a little bit afterwards if anyone wants to have a bit of a chin wag until about 2:30. I'm just going to quickly go through some very, very basic housekeeping, which you all might also be familiar with. So this is a pretty informal community-led conversation with opportunities to connect, learn from each other by listening to different perspectives and to consider changes you make in your own context. Many of us do come from experience, lived experience in the room. So we do have people in the room that have trauma associated with those lived experiences. So please be considerate of that and practice personal self-care as well. So turning screen off is okay, especially if something is triggering or if you need time or space. We ask everyone to be respectful and curious, arrive with an open heart and mind, encourage that active listening, be mindful of the shared space, and to continue conversations via the chat as well. And also if you have any questions. I'm not sure what the number is, I can't see on my screen, but we will be breaking out into breakout rooms, but so that would be your opportunity to have a further conversation. But yeah, if you have any kind of points that you want to shout out or like celebrate that someone said, just chuck it in the chat. And I think that's it. So yeah, just going to check here. Yeah. So we've got some documents coming through. I think maybe Kate has shared them, or have you yet, on some of the PDFs. Are those there, Kate? No?
I'm sorry, I can't find them. I'll just scroll down to the bottom of the document and put them in the chat.
These documents are in reference to what will be discussed today. So once those come through in the chat, you can kind of have a look. But for now, I'll pass on to Amanda and we'll get started.
Thanks, Monica. That's great. It's really lovely to be here, everyone. So my name's Amanda Kelly, and Monica didn't introduce me with an organisation name because about 4 weeks ago, I finished up my time with Women's Health Goulburn Northeast, who are one of the participants in this research. So, but this work is really important to me. And when Kate reached out to say, would you like to be part of this? I said, absolutely, I would. And we have Millie along, and it's also lovely to see Danny Klein, who is, hi Danny, who is still with Women's Health Goulburn Northeast, and Millie and Danny together, along with a third colleague who's not here today, run Women's Health Goulburn Northeast's community of practice around care through disaster, which is the conversation we're having today. So I'll probably say they and our interchangeably, because I still haven't got my head around the fact that I've left and I'm talking in a space that I've been talking in for quite a while now. So that's just by way of a brief introduction. So Women's Health Goulburn Northeast is one of 12 women's health services funded by the Victorian State Government to deliver health promotion and primary prevention. As a health promotion organisation, the organisation has really thought about how it wants to be in the world and how it wants to interact. And it has 5 aspirations, and one of those aspirations is to approach its work with care at all levels, through personal work, but also through systemic thinking as well. Women's Health Goulburn Northeast partnered up with Australia ReMADE. Australia ReMADE, and Millie can certainly tell you more about the organisation than I can, but we started working with Australia ReMADE when their national research project that they conducted in 2020 and 2021 culminated in the report that is called Reclaiming Our Purpose. It's time to talk about the public good. And the report found that there are a handful of basic goods and services that people want to be available to everyone. They came up time and time again in every conversation and group, regardless of people's socioeconomic background, their resources, where they live, their cultural background. So things like housing, healthcare, education, jobs, access to nature and access to the internet were some of the key things that people wanted. But when you looked a bit deeper, this report really gave a beautiful explanation and thinking to 3 core things. So people really wanted the opportunity to connect with each other and with place, the ability to care and be cared for, and pathways to contribute locally and nationally to who we are as communities and as a nation. So how this came together was Women's Health Goulburn Northeast was funded to work with community after the 2022 floods that impacted much of the east coast of Australia. And the organisation started to consider what it would mean if we centred care before, during and after disaster. And that's when we teamed up with Australia ReMADE to consider this. So the research, which I think those are the links that Kate are putting, I haven't looked at the chat, but I think Kate's will or has put those in the chat. So we came up with 2 reports. The first one was Care Through Disaster, a new lens on what's needed to survive through tumultuous times. And then our second report came after that, which was Care Through Disaster in Practice, a toolkit for leaders from the citizen to the state. So together, these reports highlight the following ideas. And I think that knowing the people, the understanding, the experience of people having this room, I'm sure that there are a lot of things in here that you will be familiar with. But the reports highlighted the following. So that applying a care lens to disaster helps us take a more collective, long-term approach. Expanding our view of disaster infrastructure to include the enabling infrastructure of community connection and cohesion. Encouraging us to take a more relational, less transactional approach to education and engagement regarding disaster. Challenging us to find innovative ways to better insulate people from impacts, whether it's financial or physical or otherwise, of the growing systemic disaster and risk, and demanding that we harness government and public sector for the public good to build the community's capacity to rise to our biggest challenges. So these two reports, the first one has all of the beautiful work and voices of the community in it. But what we realized was that we needed some practical, how to practically implement this. So that led to our toolkit. So I would love to invite Millie to have a bit of a chat about some of the findings, and also just invite people in the room too. Now that I've spoken, you can interrupt Millie, but no. Look, I'd love to invite you at any point to offer your observations, to ask questions. Really, this is the richness of this is in the conversation and in the work. So I hand over to Millie.
Thanks, Amanda. And thanks, everyone. It's really nice to be here. And if you do want to eat your lunch with your videos on, feel free, like we all eat. It's fine. It's nice to see your faces. So a bit of context for me, I'm Millie. I'm down here on very sunny, very beautiful Muinina country in Lutruwita, Tasmania. I have had to evacuate from a fire disaster in 2019 when I was in New South Wales. And I'm very, very conscious that I live with bush that connects to a very large wilderness area in a city that is probably highest risk in the country. And I have a husband who is disabled and housebound. So thinking about how we work as a community and how I personally navigate this in a context where I'm not convinced there will be any external help is something that's very present just for me personally. So I also want to acknowledge that this work was primarily done by two women who aren't with Australia ReMADE anymore. So I was part of leading it, but just acknowledging their work, and they've got the detailed expertise on this. So it's not mine. So one of the really key things about this work, and please do interrupt or make comment, that's totally fine, as Amanda said, is it gives us a new way of looking at disaster, or it validates a way we already look at disaster. And as Amanda said, one of the key things we found is that when you look through the lens of care, you shift from only efficiency just-in-time model to a model that recognizes all the work that happens in the years before and after, and really, I mean, essentially validates the work that communities do all the time and says, this is infrastructure, not just for survival, but for recovery and for living well. And that the communities that we like living in are the ones that are probably best prepared to deal with disaster. And so the toolkit that Amanda spoke about has 15 recommendations, which I won't go through all of them for you. But I wanted to really emphasize that the kind of biggest piece of this, and that goes through all the layers from community to from individuals to community organizations to local government to state government to federal government, is that connection and community is work, and we need to be resourcing it, supporting it, validating it, acknowledging it, and treating it as disaster, both prevention and response and recovery infrastructure. And I don't think I'm saying anything new to all of you. I don't know who you all are, but I'm assuming this is stuff that you live and breathe, and this is really just a framework that helps to validate that, if that's useful. And that the work of this community connection is often gendered. Certainly historically it's been really gendered. It's the cups of tea between juggling childcare, it's the cooking meals for neighbours, generally speaking, women have done and continue to be the ones doing the bulk of this work. But obviously, as we're now seeing families and networks with people, you know, everyone working full time, there's so much more demand on time. That's women are still doing the bulk of it, but it is being really squeezed. So one of the things I'm really interested in is how do we build an infrastructure of free time that enables this work to be done? And we need to do it more. And so, like I said, the in this report, there's these, we break it down into, well, what can individual citizens do to care through disaster and build that infrastructure, while acknowledging that there's limits to that if the federal government and other layers aren't working. And so some of the examples that we talked about, you know, if you're a citizen, the key things to do are get prepared yourself, have cups of tea with your neighbours, you know, treat that as work. That's not just because you're being lazy on the side, that's work. Community organisations, some of the recommendations include things like, you know, do information sharing via conversation, not just broadcast. Build in the kind of fun, connected bit that isn't all about efficiency and getting people in and out of the door. Local government, again, it's where are the places people are coming together, you know, where the doors are open, the lights are on and the coffee is free. I heard a lot of people want free coffee in all the conversations I've had, just as a thing. I'm not a big coffee drinker, but apparently people are. Another interesting one there in the council level was notice when people are ready. We heard a lot of people saying things like, government is worried about saying yes and the risks of saying yes, but what about the risks of saying no? And I always forget this, Amanda, but someone in another group said that there's a woman who was going to work on a bit of a framework around the risks of saying no. So maybe we can talk about that later if you can remember who that was. You know, state government address the underlying vulnerabilities that already exist. We know, as you would all know, that if you've got a population of people who are unhoused or unhealthy or, you know, whatever it is, they're already vulnerable and disaster exacerbates that. And then really on a big federal government level, and this is kind of why I like this work, is it allows you to link all the levels, is thinking about things like, well, what if we talked about public insurance rather than just private insurance? Because one of the key things in this work is where are we fragmenting our communities? You know, where are we pitting each other against, oh, there's a disaster grant, we're all fighting for it. So that fragments the communities, which weakens the infrastructure I've been talking about anyway. So where can these systems be set up that unite us rather than divide us? And so, you know, again, there's people are throwing out ideas like universal basic income, citizens disaster response, volunteer paid volunteer leave that isn't just in the corporate sector. So that's kind of gives you a sense of the way that we've been trying to layer up this thinking. And kind of before I open it up to Amanda or anyone else with questions or anything, that I see the key piece of this work is not necessarily adding new stuff to the work that you all do or the experiences you have, but it was our job as sort of researchers to synthesize the key themes and package it up so we can say, look, this is valid and valuable and important, and we keep celebrating community work and under-resourcing it. So, you know, here's your nice report with the bow on it to use. And one of the things, you know, Danny and I have been talking about, because we're running this community of practice, is how do we actually then help people to do this work together rather than, again, in isolation and separation as a fragmented thing. So I think, I don't know if you want to jump in, Amanda, and add anything, or if anyone's got questions, or we can sort of take the conversation, I think, heaps of ways with all this work.
I have got a couple of comments, Millie, but I'd love to hear if there are any people's immediate thoughts on this or questions around what we've done, because we've just packed in a couple of years' work into like 9 minutes, I think. So there's a lot there, and there's a lot of different ways to go. So I'd just be really interested if there's anyone who does have any comments or questions. If not, Millie and I've got a million things we can talk about, but I'd love to hear from you as well.
I have a comment.
Please, Monica. Yes.
I'll jump in. I think something that stood out to me in the toolkit that I found really something that I resonate with is encouraging communities to view mutual aid as like an embedded sort of in daily life, not only in crisis. And I think yeah, that's something that we might even like delve into with the breakout room conversation. But yeah, I think that was just like so well put that it's not something we need to consider. And sometimes that can feel really rushed in the moment of crisis or when there is a disaster, for us to just flock to, you know, trying to resource ourselves and build connections in that moment of stress. And considering that those connections and like those sort of systems or initiatives that communities are already kind of building in that critical care sort of context is like years and years of work, and like that impact and that investment is so important. So yeah, I loved that you guys put that in there.
Yeah, and I've got a couple of comments on that. One is like, does everyone know what mutual aid is? Because I think it's a word that gets thrown around a lot, but often is a bit unclear. There's a really excellent little booklet on it called Mutual Aid by someone called Dean Spade, which is a tiny little booklet. You can get the PDF free online, and I really recommend it. It gives a theory and then the practice of how to do it. But, you know, in essence, it's peer-to-peer support or community support, but it is not just charity. It's about also saying, oh, okay, so you might need help with this, but why do you need help with this? What's the political education part of it? So it's building relationships as you do it. And I think I want to bring it back to time as well, and how as communities and organizations we are enabling and making space for that, because it's, you know, that is really hard work. And so this is a slight segue, but my PhD was on community sharing and neighborhoods. And one of the key pieces that came out of that was that people really want to get to know their neighbours, are very happy to offer the cup of sugar, but are very hesitant to ask for that cup of sugar. And that act of asking and receiving help is probably the single biggest thing you can do to build the community networks you need to help and be helped in disaster. And so if you are, I would really think about like, what do we do with this piece of information right now? And I'm sure many of you do it in heaps of ways, but you know, Lily, my colleague who did a lot of this work, she doesn't work with us anymore, but I would say to her, like, Lily, you have to go and have a cup of coffee with someone without an outcome to the meeting, and that is work. Like, count that as work, count that as work. And so I think, you know, like, how are we in our spheres of influence and power saying, no, your coffee with no immediate outcome, no, your chat with someone, you got delayed, talking to someone when you're at the shops on the way to work because they wanted to know about fireproof tiles or something. Like, that is work. You don't have to justify that. So I'd kind of encourage you to think about, where can you solidify and validate that piece of work, exactly as you say, before disaster, before anyone sees the impact it is going to have. Yeah.
You made me think of a couple of things, Millie. One of them is some of the other work that Women's Health Gob North East was doing after the floods. So the region that we cover is a lot of regional Victoria. There's a lot of agriculture and farming going on. And what we found was that when it came to receiving help, people in our rural and regional areas were often the worst at it. They would say, they'd be like, you know, the water would be halfway up the house and the animals would be stuck in a paddock somewhere and they could barely get feed to them. They're like, look, no, we're okay. We don't need help. Go to someone else who needs more.
Yeah.
And so building that trust and that understanding in the community, and breaking down some of those sort of self-perception of like, I don't need help, or you know, we all need help at some point. And so and again, I'm not quite sure where everyone works in these spaces, but if you're in an organization or a local government that is there to support the community, building those relationships early on to understand what people's situations are, to recognize when they might need help, and to recognize that them not reaching out or not coming to the footy match or not coming to the netball game that they've always come to might mean that they're actually in distress. They're not asking for help, but they're showing it in some way. So that building up of that community connection is a really key thing, as you've highlighted, Monica. That just came through and through, and it makes it nicer to live in our communities when we know each other and when we have those connections. And I mean, it does feel really nice to help people. You know, it does feel good, and it can feel uncomfortable to be helped, but then we've got to remember that, oh, someone else would love to help me. They'd feel good about that. So it's building those, I think, is really important.
Amanda, I thought I might respond to that comment from Deb in the chat about knowledge and local knowledge and trust ahead of time is so valuable, because one of the things we heard a lot was sort of almost opposite to what Amanda was saying. There was one woman who said, look, we were flooded in, but we know how floods work here. We knew with the amount of rain that we were okay. And so, you know, that's changing with climate change, and obviously as disasters get much more unpredictable. But she just felt that that took away their agency to respond in that moment. And we also heard from people in, you know, again, the volunteer SES saying, like, we know this landscape and no one was listening to us. We knew the fire would go up here because, and so again and again at all level, we heard this, like, where is the space to listen to the community? And because in a crisis, obviously you have to work fast if you don't have that existing trust. But again, this is the difference between care is so inefficient, you know, like it is so inefficient. And so how do we bake in inefficiency as a part of the process? And coming back to that SES thing, you know, we heard in quite a few communities, they're going to have to shut down the SES because the people there don't have time. And these are small rural communities where an ambulance is hours away and the SES would otherwise be the first responder. So there's, again, the lack of time and support to recognise the cost, financial time otherwise, of this is really a missing piece at the moment, I think.
Yeah. One of the things that we were talking about earlier was just around the gendered nature of this work, and that it's often been perceived as soft, and you know, it's not important. You shouldn't be paid for having a coffee with someone. You shouldn't be paid to make a meal and hand it over, because that just happen. And I think that so we were in a group a few weeks ago, and I can't even remember the group, and I can't remember who said it, but I have witnesses. I know Danny was there in the room. But you know, one of the guys in the room said that, you know, it's often the guys, and I am, you know, we're generalizing here, but it's often guys who like to do things. They like to feel useful. So in those moments where it is an emergency and it needs to be fast moving, that's when men often step up because they go, I know how to do this. I've got it down pat, and I move. And that's a really important part of this work. People need to be safe. They need to be, to know that someone has that knowledge. But in our research, we have a fantastic case study from Mike, who's in the Country Fire Authority in Victoria. And so their community had been hit by fire in the past. And Mike himself, and he's said this publicly, he was very traumatized by this. It was a really horrific experience, as it would be. So as a member of the CFA, and he felt that there could be a different way that this could be done. And he went out to the community and said, look, this has been very difficult. This has been traumatic. I want us as a community to work out a better way to do this. And so community members of all genders got together and brought their skills, their knowledge, and their experience together. And in more recent fires, it turned out that there was barely any loss of, there was no loss of life, thank goodness. There was barely any loss of property and infrastructure. Everybody knew what everyone needed. And so what you were talking about before, Millie, the CFA knew the fire would go in this way and go in this direction. You know, the community knew who needed help in that area. So there was this sort of wonderful working together, but that was years of work to get them to this point where they all understood each other. So again, it highlights how everyone in the community can bring all their knowledge and skills together to build this. And that was something that all of the community put their time and energy into. They all made time for that. So yeah, it sort of ties together some of those threads.
And that was actually Kangaroo Valley, I remember, in New South Wales, and there's a book where that case study, we can share more information on that, but it's a really fantastic group. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you reckon we should duck off into the little breakout rooms? Yeah.
I think that's probably a good idea, Monica. Yeah.
Do it. Let's do it. I think, yeah, there was some really, really incredible points that you guys made, and would love to have the opportunity to kind of deep dive. So I think Kate was going to support to put us in breakout rooms. I'll just put the whiteboard link again in the chat. And also something to just quickly acknowledge, we do have like that catalogue that's, you know, people can just jump in and share some of like those sorts of case studies or more local kind of formalized groups. But I guess what you guys are talking about as well is the sort of like informal kind of work that's kind of happening that's probably not as formalized or seen or recognized in like an organizational aspect. So even if you guys have things within this catalog that aren't like formalized groups or anything, chuck in like anything. I just put like community gardens across the country because we can't document every single one, but that's also like a really great example of food security and that like access to food. So yeah, we've got 2 questions as well in the breakout room. So just feel free to kind of either deep dive on that, share your thoughts. If you just go through one question, that's also fine. But we'll sorry that was so short. Obviously, I mean, we do this every time and we're like, we need way more time to talk about this and to talk about every other topic we touch on. We need to add like the other extra half an hour. And I think a lot of us only kind of got to touch on that first question, if that, probably also just connected and said hi. So that's also fine. That's the point of this. Yeah, shall we go through some of the groups quickly to give a little bit of overview of some of the things you talked about? Doesn't have to be the questions, no pressure, could just be the conversation. Does anyone want to go first?
I'm happy to jump in and finish my idea.
Yeah, go for it, please.
So I was in a group with Millie, Pete, Iris and Danny. And mainly we talked about who we were and where we were from and why we're in this space. And that's as much benefit in some ways, I think, as the questions. And if we'd had more time, I thought we would have had a really great discussion. I guess just in reflecting what I heard the group talk about when we just started to look at the question was talking around Iris's reflections and Pete's reflections on the importance of community recreation and community spaces as safe places to go. I was just about to explain where I thought I live in Malakuta and I was community recovery hub coordinator. I've got a state government role, but I've got a lot of voluntary and community roles and disaster impacted communities living and volunteering here. And I guess what I was saying was, in terms of the way we organise as a remote shelter-in-place community, and Mallacoota and District, I should say, is that, MADRA, Mallacoota and District Community Recovery Association, has made a decision, after we're in our 6th year, to go on pause or standby mode, but keep all governance arrangements in place, ready to stand up for the next disaster, which there will be one. But also the initiative around that is particularly around looking at the absolute abundance of memberships and interest groups we have in Mallacoota, and how we strategically organise, because through that we are able to tap into lots of different groups and demographics, and particularly people who are perhaps maybe fall through the radar, or not as accessible. So I guess that was one of the things that I just started to touch on in terms of the importance. So I've popped into the catalogue, for instance, the Mallacoota Cares link as one example of community workers looking after our age population, and a community sort of solution to that around self-managed care packages as one example.
Awesome. Thanks, Katie. That was really insightful. And Pete just made a comment about how great the sort of standby mode in the Mallacoota community just works for you guys for now, and that's all part of the transient process of doing that community organising. Who would like to go next? I don't know who was in each group, which is kind of unhelpful, but Amanda or Millie, were you in the same group or separate?
We're in separate groups. So I was in the room with Jessie, Paul, and Deb. We didn't even introduce ourselves. We just dived in. We were like, we want to go for these questions. So yeah, we were just talking about the different ways that we'd seen community working together. And I think one of the lovely things that I heard from Deb was in response to Jessie's questions, like, how do you get people interested in preparing for disaster when it's in our natures to go, that won't happen to me, or and Deb's suggestion is around storytelling, is getting people together to tell stories, and I thought that was a really that was a really good one to remember. It's sort of something I think a lot of us do, but yeah, so that was great. And then we just talked about we told some stories, really.
Oh,
so yeah,
that's lovely.
Yeah.
Nice. Thanks, Amanda. What about your group, Millie?
I was in Katie's group. She's already.
Oh, you're in Katie's. Okay. Who else was there? I think there was another group left. Was it me? Was it our group? Steve?
Yeah, so we had we had Janine, Meredith, and Terry. And we put some sticky notes up there. The first comment we said was start small, and that could mean any number of things, but just to start and have a conversation. Or we went back over the free coffee example as well. Just people, excuse me, people coming together over coffee, just to understand what people are thinking, and also to really work out what the strengths of the community are in those conversations, whether it's at an individual level or coming together as a broader group or series of groups, if you like, in different ways. But also just understanding that those regular conversations and activities that might be voluntary or other things that happen through the year are often really good in bringing people together just every day, and those things can be enhanced and utilised when things go wrong. So one of the examples that I brought up was the local community market. We have a local community market here, and people just coming together to set up the tents and do all the things and volunteer. And I mentioned that they were always the people that I thought would probably be, if they're around, the same people that we come in and we've already worked together just doing those things. We're already quite resourceful, have some tools and skills and know each other, and we just work out how to move forward and keep moving ahead during a time of crisis or when things go wrong or sideways. What else was there, Janine and Terry and Meredith?
I think, it was just really identifying those community strengths and leveraging off them. Like what do we already do well, like already looking at that asset-based community development approach, and identify who are the community leaders who can advocate for your community and for everyone in it. Yeah. That's, yeah. Anyone else?
I think we've got it covered.
Oh, what were you going to say, Steve? Sorry, I cut you
I
off.
just think we've got it covered. Thanks, Mom.
Cool. All right. Well, I guess I'll just do a little bit of a quick wrap up, but I guess, yeah, thank you, Amanda and Millie, for coming today and sharing some really amazing insights into the work that you guys have done. And yeah, obviously we want to continue this conversation and doing that within our own circles of community and peers and work colleagues and yada yada, every single person we get in contact with. So would love to maintain this dialogue. We have our next get together. We have them every month, obviously, but this one we've kind of gotten into a bit of a rhythm where the conversation that we've had today will be brought into a summary, and within that summary kind of comes up some sort of key themes that people have brought up, and then that becomes the theme for the next one. So we'll keep you guys posted with what we end up having for the next theme, but you can register for that one. And what else can I say? We have, yeah, obviously joining the Learning Network as well. That's a really great way to build connections with some of those community groups who are doing that work. And we have a kind of sort of newsletter, but it's a bit of a reminder of events and things that are happening. We do have our community congress coming up. I don't know if you guys are aware of that, which is very exciting. We're working very hard in bringing lots of community leaders, facilitators, community groups across the country together. And we're really, it's sort of a community-led event in collaboration with Resilient Lismore. And that is happening on the 19th of September, which is a Friday, and it is an all-day event, and we will be releasing the tickets very, very soon. So we really hope you can come and enjoy and connect with people and yeah, learn a bit more about what some of those grassroots communities are doing. I think we've got a feedback form as well. So if you have any reflections or insights or things that you want to share with us. Pete has his hand up. Yes.
Just with the community congresses, I assume that's virtual, is it? Or
it is virtual.
Okay,
Thank you. That's very important information.
I wasn't sure if I have to fly somewhere or
no. Thank you for that.
Fly to my lounge room and onto my computer. Yeah, cool.
No, I appreciate that reminder. It is virtual, so anyone can come. It's going to be online all day, and it will be kind of segmented in lots of different times, so you won't be stuck on your computer for the 9 to 5. There will be breaks and things you can tap in and tap out as much as you like. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled on our socials for that. And yeah, we'll stay on for a little bit longer and see if
you need a photo, Mon.
Oh,
we always forget to take a photo.
We do. If you don't want to be in the photo, now is your chance to take your camera off or leave. Let me know if you've done it, Kate. I think she's done it. I can see the finger movements. Yep, there we go. All right. Thanks, guys, so much for coming.
Thanks for putting it on. Thanks, Amanda.
Enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Great to meet you all. Bye.